Howdy, folks. Wow, I'm kind of distant today, don't I? Hi. Welcome to Anatomy for Blu-ray. In this video, I will actually be looking at the Sunburnt Screens release. This is actually Umbrella Entertainment of Love Serenade. This is actually the reversible cover that you can get, which has this cover. That's your side, and that's the back. That's like the theatrical poster. But on the inside, along with your disc art, comes with that, which, yeah, basically the same on the front, but of course removes the logos and the rating system. And then you've got this, which does describe the film, as well as gives you the region codes, all regions, plus the special features. Widescreen 2.35 to 1, 2.0 dual mono, all regions, 101 minutes, 1080p. It comes with a bunch of special features. So let's talk about it. Now, I will mention how, this being one of my favourite Australian films, I actually have the original DVD release, the original Australian DVD release, which is actually signed by Miranda Otto. I met her, I'm pretty sure it was last year, made last year, because that's apparently the last time in 2021, so that's apparently the last time I actually watched the film, and I showed it to my girlfriend like a day before I went and got this signed, so I do have at least a version to compare it to. As you can see, it looks kind of dodgy as a release, but it is legit. I even have the receipt for the $60 autograph for Miranda Otto. So I don't think I brought the whole case in with me, or I did, and I took out the disc. I can't remember, but still, she obviously signed the paper underneath, which was really nice. And she was wonderful. I thought it would be pretty cool to be like, everyone's there for, Sabrina the Teenage Witch and Lord of the Rings, and I was like, hey, I'm here because of an Australian movie you made back in '96. Do you remember Love Serenade? And she did. She had some fond memories of it, so that was fun to discuss with her. So, of course, I watched the film. I got about 20 minutes in, and then I actually chucked on all the special features because I was wanting to listen to the audio commentary. There isn't one. So, yeah. Then I just watched the rest of the film after I watched all the special features. So, as a breakdown, what is the film about? So, Love Serenade. Two sisters will do anything to hook the right man. A lot of fish puns, by the way. Sibling rivalry is at an all-time high in this righteous, award-winning Australian romantic comedy from Camera d'Or winner director Shirley Barrett and the Oscar-nominated producer of The Piano and Bright Star. Vicky Ann Hurley, Rebecca Faith, and her younger sister Dimity, Miranda Otto, are two lonely women on the lookout for love in the small outback town of Sunray, which is actually, it's not actually a town called Sunray in real life, but the actual town is in the very, 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 very north of Victoria, which is cool because I live in Victoria. When once popular radio personality Ken Sherry, George Shevstov, arrives in town to revive his dwindling career, the Hurley sisters welcome the distraction with open arms, vying for his attention and affection at any and every opportunity. The honey-voiced Sherry and his sexy Barry White-inspired playlist turns Vicky Ann on to seize the moment and seduce the DJ in her own unique fashion. But when Dimity also expresses her amorous interests and stakes a claim, the stage is set for a high-spirited conflict between the decidedly desperate sisters. So, yeah. In terms of visuals and audio, now having come from the DVD, which was in 4:3, which was still widescreen, but 4:3 widescreen, not great. When I went to watch that last year, it looked really shit. But then I was like, maybe it's on a streaming service like Stan or whatever, and it was on Netflix, and I was like, oh fuck yeah, and it looked really nice. Like, it looked remastered, not fully remastered. There was still some dirt and spots here and there, but the colours were pulpier. Everything about it was nicer. Turns out they'd actually done a HD remaster, and it had only gone to Netflix by that stage. So I was really, really excited when they announced that they were going to bring out a Blu-ray, because I was like, fuck yeah, it might be the exact same transfer. And it is. It's the exact same transfer, which is really good. Depending. Because the original film looked a bit more muted in its colours, I think the Blu-ray still has a lot of muted colours, but there's a lot of, if you've seen the film before, Vicky Ann in particular, who works at a beauty parlour, pretty much a hair salon, she wears a lot of pinks. Her room, very pink. But then you compare it to Dimity, and her colours are usually really drab, brown, dark blue, navy colours, grey. It's usually really drab and dull until halfway throughout the film when something happens to her and suddenly she's kind of a bit more colourful. But the locations around them, you know, the city around them of Sunray is pretty drab, it's pretty brown, it's meant to be a bit more muted. Of course, that's always contrasted to the spring leaves, which are all green and very rich green, from the vineyards to the actual, you know, trees around the neighbourhood and whatever. So there are occasions where I'm thinking, like, I don't know how much of it was director approved / cinematographer approved, to the point of it definitely looks a lot richer in colour, but the drabness of the Australian outback, that whole location still looks pretty brown, but it doesn't really have so much of a muted texture to, I think, the DVD has, and potentially the original print. Unfortunately, there's nothing talking about it. It might be that they just were able to get the print, they remastered it, but they didn't consult with anyone, like, say, Criterion or Arrow Video would do, where they would consult either the DOP or the director, and or even a producer, to get a perspective of, hey, does this look to your standards of either what you want it to look like now, or the original? There are scenes where where Dimity is at work in the fish shop, and it's very blue, and it's a very strong blue. It's not, like, overbearing or anything, but, like, it's definitely got a strong colour to it, and it's like, I don't know how much of that would be so much in terms of being dull and whatever, and muted. Now, of course, when I watched one of the special features, they actually interviewed the cinematographer, and they were saying how they looked at this area, they were experimenting with different lenses to make it look more muted. So it's potential that they themselves wanted that everything around the characters would be muted, the area around the characters would be muted, but the costumes would be a bit more colourful, maybe, depending on the character. Like, again, Vicky Ann wearing a bright pink, she wants to be a bigger personality, have more to her life, but she just doesn't, and she's restricted to just what she has in a small town, living with her sister, working at a hair salon. So there's an element like that I'm a bit iffy on. It still looks really good. I really like it, but it's like, is this exactly what they wanted in terms of their remaster? Because, like, having seen what's another film? But I'm a Cheerleader gives me the similar vibe. That's like a 97 film, kind of small budget as well. That one's got very particular colours in its costuming and, like, set design. And it reminds me a lot of that in a way, with how it uses its hues of its pinks and stuff, but it's not tonal color of the film, it's just the color of the costuming and the locations. So yeah, I'm still a bit iffy on that. Like, it makes me kind of want to, where's that video I watched? Like, there's a version of it on YouTube, and it's very, very brown. But then even, you know, yeah, it's interesting, because it's like, there are definitely scenes, like, there's a version, someone's uploaded the whole film to YouTube, basically, where it's only in free 60p, but it's like, the colour palette of it looks a lot more muted, a lot more brown, just a lot more muted in general. I know muted and brown aren't one and the same, but muted means that the colours aren't as bright, so of course watching it and being like, you know, Vicky Ann's pink dress is very pink, you know, but then the rest of the surroundings are very muted as well, but then the greens are very greens. It's basically green, pink, and blue are basically a bit more highlighted, whereas everything is still quite brown and greyed in a way. So I'm just very particular about that. You know, if given we're in a generation now of 4K and Blu-ray remasters where it's director approved with color timing and everything, you know, it's like, I imagine someone would have looked over this remaster and been like, oh, I don't like the browns and the muted hues, I'm going to remove them. Like, watching The Hunger Games and watching the first, like, 20 to 30 minutes where, you know, being called into the Hunger Games, volunteering, whatever, and, like, it's all muted and everything, and then being like, it looks ugly, I'm going to change the settings of my TV so, oh, look, it looks bright now. But then when it cuts to, oh, now they're in a city where everything looks bright on purpose, oh shit, it's too bright now. So it's a lot of that stuff is very particularly done. But nevertheless, the rest of the video, it still looks good. There are still some, you know, specks and scratches here and there, nothing too alarming or whatever. So it's not a perfect print, but it still looks really nice, especially in comparison to at least the quality of the DVD standard. And the audio, despite being 2.0 mono, I think really works. It's very front heavy, but it's got a musical soundtrack. Again, a lot of Barry White, so it just works. I think it works quite well. It probably could use with a 5.1 remix, but I don't really mind the 2.0. I think it works quite well for it. Yeah, there's not really much else to say about the audio visual. The audio I'm fine with for the whole entire picture. It does come with subtitles as well, if you are hard of hearing. A lot of these Sunburnt screen releases have English subtitles. But yeah, I'm just very up in the air about if the film should look as bright as it does in the actual transfer, because there's a lot of times where you'll get a film that's been released several times, and sometimes it's darker, sometimes it's brighter, sometimes there are key highlights, but by the final 4K UHD restoration, the final version of it, it's a bit of a in-between of all of them. So yeah, it's something. But again, there's nothing on it. We'll talk about special features now. There are no special features that actually talk about the restoration or anything. I think the restoration was done as the 20th anniversary back in 2016. Or it was a 25-year anniversary for 2021. I don't know, because again, I watched it in May of 2021, so I don't imagine it would have been, I mean, unless it was released at the very start of 2021, I don't know. But again, it took until 2022 for a Blu-ray release to come out. However, I will note, of course, my main issue with the release, not just in terms of the visuals being a lot brighter than I think that they should be, I think that they probably should be a lot more muted. So, I mean, that's one thing. It doesn't come with the audio commentary. I don't know what the fucking deal with that is. Like, the director and the producer did an audio commentary track. It's on my DVD, but it's not on the Blu-ray release. The DVD has not just the original color timing, which, I mean, you also look at that, it's probably going to be tricky to see, but you kind of see how it's very brown. She's got it like blue and it's pink. I know it's very overblown in these two images, but like, you see how it's kind of got this particular style to it. It's similar to that in a way. Like, yeah, it's meant to have this very drab, you know, muted look to the whole film. But the DVD has the commentary, behind the scenes, and a trailer. Not an amazing amount of stuff, but commentary track still exists. But it's not on here. And the behind the scenes featurette is basically just, oh yeah, we just kind of filmed everyone during their lunch break one day, and they just kind of talked about some stuff, but we didn't have a good enough mic, so it doesn't really pick up much. It's mostly just wind and background noise. So it's not a great featurette for, like, you know, like 3 to 4 minutes of just, look, they're talking in a lunch break, you know? It's not amazing as a behind the scenes featurette. Basically skippable completely, because you can't even hear what most people are saying anyway. So it is the original behind the scenes featurette. I will actually start from back to front. It has a theatrical trailer, which is fun. That also seems like it doesn't look like they've remastered the trailer. It's hard to say that the trailer looked. I don't know. I can't from the top of my head. Even after just seeing the trailer and the movie, picking out as to whether or not the trailer was the original or if it's been a recut version. I don't know. You've got a photo gallery, which is a bunch of stills, but it's got music playing. It's just like a slideshow in a way, which is, it's cute. It's like a minute and a half long. You do have a film buff's forecast interview with director Shirley Barrett, which goes for half an hour. It's basically, she's on the phone to the, a radio guy in this case, the film buff's forecast. So basically a podcast back in the day. So back in 96. And yeah, she just talks about the film. Obviously the guy has seen it as well. And this is like post them winning the, Camera d'Or. So they just talk about the film and everything. It's really interesting to listen to. It's always fun to basically listen to a director talk about the film for the most part, but this was quite nice. And it's basically because it's completely new to this release. Like, it's not on a previous release that I know of, especially not my other Australian release DVD. But of course, then you get interviews with cast and crew, including Miranda Otto, Rebecca Firth, and Shirley Barrett, and a bunch more. Basically, your main three actors, your writer-director, Shirley Barrett, the main producer, the costume designer, the cinematographer. I don't think there was a production designer. I think it was just costume designer. There was a random person who just lives there was interviewed as well. So there was a bunch of different interviews. And they're all like, 2 to 3 minute things. Like 1 minute at the shortest. Actually, the shortest is actually like 30 seconds, which is with the resident. But the rest of them are pretty short, like, 1.5 minutes to 4 minute long things. One of the websites I did find talking about all this stuff did mention how some of the stuff that the director and the producer did talk about, they elaborated a lot more in the audio commentary, which would have been nice to have watched. I would have watched it with the audio commentary. I still rewatched the whole movie because it's just a blast to watch. Like, you get hooked in once that first Barry White song starts playing and you got the fish on the screen. It's just, like, beautiful. But, yeah, it's just... It's a release that's very pros and cons. The pros is it's a nice-looking transfer. It's got good, solid audio. It's got a bunch of great special features, which are all original stuff, all from the year it was released, basically. But the cons is that it lacks the audio commentary, and that I don't think that this is a director and or DOP approved scan. I'm pretty sure someone was talking about it. I read in an interview, definitely was last year when I was watching the Netflix version, and I was reading into it, and someone was saying how they had premiered a new transfer. So it's possible I might do some more research and add it on screen, but I'm more than certain that the director was involved in the upgrade, the remaster, which, even if so, the film does still look great. And I think it having some popping colours whilst, like, the background and everything else is kind of muted except for the green of the trees. And these are, like, thick trees because, again, this is, middle of spring to the end of summer as to when they were filming it. So it makes sense as to why, the leaves are so green and everything, because that's when they're meant to be green. So, yeah, it's interesting. It does make the cinematography look a bit nicer. Like, the cinematography already does look quite nice for the film. But, yeah, it's interesting. Because, again, if you want to go for a particular look, you probably usually want to have all the colours muted, but they probably would have digitally gone over it and been like, I want to highlight the pinks of her dress. I want to highlight this and highlight that. Like, a free colour kind of dynamic. Like, pink for one colour, blue for another, green for another kind of deal. So... like as if it's motifs or whatever. I don't know. Brown as a motif, sure. Anyway, but as an overall, I definitely think if you don't have the film, it's worth buying. You could easily just watch it on Netflix, which is the only other thing I could argue if it's still on Netflix or whatever streaming service. But at the same time, if you can't get a hold of the Blu-ray, I would wholeheartedly recommend checking out the film. Especially if you're very up in the air about it. It's like 100 minutes. It's a very easy film to watch. It's very, very funny. It's like a kind of dark humorish. It's a very bizarre film, but I absolutely adore it. It's kind of like What if Australia did a sex comedy that wasn't dumb? So, yeah, it's very interesting. But as an overall, I definitely would recommend getting the Blu-ray. Again, my only criticism is the fact that even if the transfer is not approved or not, my only real criticism is the lack of a commentary track. Like, usually I'm not big on commentary tracks, but it's like, why isn't it there? It exists, so why isn't it there? And I don't know if I can personally port it over, like burn the DVD on, download that track, and then put it onto the Blu-ray myself. I want to do that. I want to see if I can do that, because that would be really fucking cool if I could do that. And I might have the tech to do so. I mean, realistically, I could probably just reprint it through Premiere, but I feel like because it has the menus and everything, I don't think I could do that. I don't think it works as simply as I think it does. So it's not like I can just break it up into different files and remaster it and re-implant it. I don't think that's how it works. I don't know. I've never had to do a DVD or Blu-ray before. Anyway, so yeah, as an overall, it's a good package as well. Like, I like the clear acrylic. I'm not really huge on the whole Sunburnt screens line bullshit. I don't give a crap about any of that stuff. Not the fact that I don't give a crap about Australian cinema, but that I don't like when they put as a line, just release the fucking movie. You know, it's already on the umbrella. Is that not enough of an umbrella? Now it's just Love Serenade 17, you know, and it's just, I don't have any other Sunburnt screen releases, and I don't plan to get any others because most of them are just repackagings. Especially, some have a few new interviews, but for the most part, they're just like repackagings with hardly any extra stuff. So, like, they've got Two Hands, which is one of my other Australian films that I absolutely adore. And I've already got a Blu-ray release, but then they're like, oh, we've re-released it with like 2 new interviews and English subtitles. That's about it, you know, new packaging. Go buy it. It's only $25. Anyway. So yeah. So that's all for now. Thank you for watching this Anatomy of a Blu-ray. Go check out this Australian masterpiece, either on streaming or on this Blu-ray, which, again, I don't think that the special features are skippable. I do think that they're quite interesting, for the most part, especially the interview, the 30-minute interview, because that's a post-making the film, whereas all the interviews that they have in between, which they don't have a play all section, you have to go individually each by each, and their formatting is like, still shot, Miranda Otto in blank, this character, or the actor, talks about this topic, and then they talk about that topic, and then it pauses again for another screen. This actor talks about this thing, continues. It's like, oh my god, you know. Anyway, it's not the best, but not the worst. It's at least something. At least it's not a bare bones release like a lot of the like American DVD releases were. Just put on the fucking commentary. Anyway, gives me more reason to keep the DVD, especially because I've got it signed. So, pros and cons. That's all for now. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on the next Anatomy of a Blu-ray. Adios.